Hello and welcome to the EdjSports NFL Week 11 recap coming to you on Monday morning. I'm your host, Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst here at EdjSports. Joining me as always is Scott Brown, our VP of Data Science here at EdjSports. Scott, it's Thanksgiving weekend. We're already here coming down the stretch in the NFL season. Got the holidays just around the corner, and it seems like we'll be at the playoffs before you know it. So
Crazy.
How was Week 11 for you? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, I did have a good weekend. It's amazing to me that we're in Week 11. Seems like the season just kicked off yesterday. Time flies, as the cliche goes. But yeah, had a good weekend watching some football. It's definitely, we're right in the thick of it. It's that time of year. Getting cold down here in Louisville, Kentucky. Turn on the game on a Sunday, and it's
nice, cold, rainy, cloudy day.
Yeah,
yesterday.
exactly.
It was perfect.
Exactly. Don't really want to venture outside. Just turn the games on and enjoy. How was your weekend, Ian?
It was good. It was good. Had one Thanksgiving already, so that was on Saturday.
Nice.
So that was a ton of fun, and having the games yesterday, so it went by pretty quickly. So hopefully these few days off coming up here soon last a little bit longer. But hey, we'll still have some football on Thursday. We got more football Sunday and then Monday. So before we dive into the recap, though, just want to remind everyone that we are available on the EdjSports Podcast Network, which is available on your podcast platform of choice. Also available on our EdjSports YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that YouTube channel as well as any of the podcasts that we've got going on. Give us a 5-star review. Help us to grow our audience and get these recaps and betting previews and everything out to even more people. We'll also have our coach rankings this week. We will not have a video. We will release the updated rankings, though. No video with the holiday this week. A lot going on and a lot of people out and about. But we'll still have those updated rankings. We should still have a matchup preview for every game as well. So those will still be available. So now we'll just get into the Week 11 recap. So ended yesterday with a game that was a pretty crazy ending. The Chargers led pretty much the whole game. The Steelers pretty much looked left for dead there early in the fourth quarter. Ended up scoring 24 points in the fourth quarter, I think. Maybe even more by the end. They were down, 17 going into the fourth quarter. 27-10 going into the fourth quarter. So crazy ending. Ended up a 41-37 victory for the Chargers. But a ton of excitement there. I mean, they came back, make it a nail-biter. Obviously, I thought this one was going to go to overtime before the Pittsburgh blown coverage that let Mike Williams get into the end zone. It looked like, the Chargers are moving the ball, but I really thought they were going to kind of not necessarily go conservative, but the way you see that happen a lot is defense kind of gets enough of a stop and gets that field goal to go to overtime. So Brandon Staley, too, continues to make himself candidate for our Coach of the Year. He got leapfrogged by Mike McCarthy last week. McCarthy doesn't make any of our lists this week, but there is one thing I want to mention about him a little bit later on when we get to some of our worst decisions that could cause him to move back into second place or lower over Brandon Staley, because his fourth down decision he made late in this game was awesome. Fourth quarter, only 3:48 left, tie ball game, 4th and 1 on their own 34. And he chose to go for it. In this situation, knowing if you don't get it, Pittsburgh's already pretty much in a go-ahead field goal range. This was a 13.2% increase. Good. It's definitely a top 10 on the season in good fourth down goes this year. Weren't able to get it. It actually ended up being one of our most impactful plays of the week that they failed. Fourth most impactful. It cost them 23%. So they gained 13.2% on the decision prior to the play, but they lose 23.2% on getting stopped. The Steelers came up with a big stop there.
Yeah, I think what makes this one sort of extra interesting is that it kind of seems like Brandon Staley is a one-man show in the NFL this year. It's sort of him versus everybody else when it comes to the coaches, from the standpoint that he is just going for it. He's finding the right goes in many situations, but also just in situations where he likely may be the only coach in the NFL that would be making that decision. He's pedaled to the metal. We recall that game earlier in the season where, he was going for it in situations where even we were hesitating to say that was the right move, against Kansas City. So, this one was, I think, more of the same as you highlighted with 3:48, 4th and 1. Those sorts of details to this are maybe not too surprising to see, but being backed up on their own 34-yard line definitely would, I think, cause a lot of coaches to pause and not make this same call. So he winds up going for it. Of course, playing the results, it did not work in their favor. Austin Eckler got stuffed, but really the right call. And not to play results yet again, but it definitely wound up ultimately working out for the Chargers as the Steelers took over. they didn't really move the ball at all, but since they were already in field goal range, just kind of cashed in the field goal, and then the Chargers were able to take it from there and close things out, which we'll get to next.
Yeah, and this one a case of the amount of time left. Like you said, they ended up getting the field goal, but because of how much time was left when they went for it and failed, they still had time to answer with a touchdown of their own. I think they got the ball back with under a minute left, or maybe right around the 2-minute warning.
Had all their timeouts, yeah.
Yeah, so and both teams had all their timeouts. They kept them all pretty. Both teams were really good with their timeouts until the end when they needed them. They all had a full complement of timeouts. But going for it, knowing, hey, if we don't get it, hopefully the defense can step up. They had a tough fourth quarter. Some of it was some special teams play with the block punt Pittsburgh had. But yeah, knowing we'll have time to either get a stop, even if they do score, they're pretty close. We'll have time to respond. So as you mentioned, the Chargers did end up winning with that Mike Williams touchdown pass, and then held off the Steelers back to a 4th and 32 from their own, I think, 3-yard line. Was just a kind of a crazy way to end that one. And then it kind of an even crazier one. I mean, not as much of the excitement, I guess, throughout the whole fourth quarter, but still plenty of excitement. And this one was the Ravens and the Bears. So Lamar Jackson scratched late Sunday. He missed practice, I think, or was limited a couple days in the week. Friday he returned to practice, and then Saturday night, he still wasn't great. Sunday just was not feeling well enough to go. So Tyler Huntley came in to start. Believe that was his first start. And came in, not a lot of scoring in this one. Justin Fields ended up leaving the game injured in this one too, so it was two backups going against each other, though Andy Dalton was the starter to start the season. A little bit more, maybe not necessarily competent quarterback than Huntley, but definitely more experienced. But that didn't matter, being a lot closer than we thought. So this one had a lot of impactful plays, a lot of good calls throughout. Like this one was chock full of just win probability, maximization, and losses all over the place.
We'll call it a diamond in the rough. Yeah. We'll call it a diamond in the rough. I think from the look of it and sort of the setup with the backup quarterbacks going against one another and kind of the low scoring, there's maybe not as much surface appeal in this one, but as you dig deeper, as we're about to do, and kind of dive into some of these calls and some of these plays, it definitely gets more interesting. We promise.
Yeah, and starting in the fourth quarter in this one, we've got Matt Nagy, who's 22nd in our coach rankings, made a very good call. He was 13th in the CCI, which is the fourth down decision-making metric that we have. So really, he's been a little bit higher. We caught some flack a couple weeks ago for him being so high, not really so high in our rankings, but in the low 20s. The fourth down, decision-making wise, he's been pretty good this year, and this was a little bit more of the same. Fourth quarter, early on, 12 and a half minutes left, 4th and 1 on their own 49. They're up 7-6, so leading. This is a situation you probably see a lot of coaches say we'll play with the lead. We both got backup quarterbacks. Chicago's had a pretty good defense, not as good as in the past. Khalil Mack now out for the year, but still maybe thinking, hey, just punt, try and pin them deep. But no, Nagy chose to go for it. Ended up being a 9.5% increase in pre-snap win probability, so that was our second best of the week, right behind that Brandon Staley one we just covered. This is another one they didn't convert, but it was still the correct decision.
Yeah, definitely the right call. You're just basically one yard short of midfield here as the Bears, and you're right that with the backup quarterback, with the Bears having their backup quarterback in, and same with the Ravens, that maybe that sort of lends itself to being more passive in this situation. But I mean, Andy Dalton's a longtime veteran of this league. He's been, I would say, in the top 10 of quarterbacks in his prime. He's definitely a very competent backup as far as
fairly accomplished with some not many playoff wins, I don't think, but got them to the playoffs a handful of times.
Yeah, he's definitely been a high performer, and he's just too good, I think, to kind of discount the Bears in this spot. And I think that says a lot, even coming from me, a Bears fan. But fourth and 1 from midfield here. There's we'll beat the dead horse. Not a lot of benefit. Not as much benefit to punting, right? It's very hard to swing field position much in an impactful way, and you have 12 and a half minutes left in the fourth, so you're really kind of running out of impactful moments and places to pick up some good edge here. So your offense is just going to be converting at too high of a clip to be punting, and you have a 1-point lead, so the game's really not put away by any means, and wasting a possession here by punting is really not the move. So going here, going for it here is one that we endorse. And Matt Nagy, as you mentioned, he's had his moments in this season where he's made the right call, and here's another example that we can add to the pro list for him, where he found the right call in the right spot.
Yeah, still a lot of time left in this one too. I mentioned 12 and a half minutes left. We've got David Montgomery, who's a very good running back up there in Chicago. So we mentioned, not able to convert it there, but the defense was able to get a stop as Baltimore turned the ball over. Chicago intercepted Tyler Huntley inside the red zone, I think at the Chicago 14 on a second down. Just a few minutes later was a 22.6% decrease in win probability for the Ravens, was our fifth most impactful of the week, and that was Tashawn Gibson on the interception there. And it came down to the wire in the last 2 minutes. We had some extremely impactful plays that come up here. The Bears took the lead. Huge pass from Andy Dalton to Darnell Mooney. I think there was a coverage bust on this one, if I remember correctly, similar to the Pittsburgh game where Mike Williams scored and Darnell Mooney was open, pretty much wide open. Second most impactful play of the week was that Marquise Goodwin. The Mooney touchdown was earlier in the game. Hits Marquise Goodwin for a 49-yard touchdown with only a minute 48 left. So put them up at that point. That was a 41.8% increase in pre-snap win probability. So just a huge play from Andy Dalton at that point. So sorry, they were down 7-9, so put them up 13.
Yeah.
They went for 2.
Yeah, that's right. So it makes it an even bigger swing, right? Because you leapfrog your opponent. Yeah, I mean that was just a huge pass play on a fourth and long, where it looked pretty bleak for the Bears, and I think from having watched a lot of these things over the years, it's roll out call the screen pass and get off the field is something that maybe you'd expect traditionally from the Bears, but yeah, they surprised us all, and Andy Dalton connects on a big pass play here with Marquise Goodwin. It's sort of, I think, cool to see the Bears change up their personnel at receiver and go for those deep threats with both Darnell Mooney and Marquise Goodwin. So came in handy in this particular situation, and it definitely made this one competitive and exciting at the end.
Yep, and this isn't new for Andy Dalton either, especially against the Ravens. If you remember, I think it was against the Ravens when he had the touchdown pass to, I believe, Tyler Boyd to knock the Ravens out of the playoffs and get the Bills in for the first time back in 2017. So another just absolute dagger there from Andy Dalton. But this time, the Ravens responded. They were able to get a touchdown, highlighted by the most impactful play of the week. Was the 3rd and 12 on the Chicago 32. Only 33 seconds left. Baltimore did still have a timeout left. Huntley completes a pass down the right sideline to Sammy Watkins right at the 3-yard line. Makes the catch, goes out of bounds. A 44.7% increase in pre-snap win probability. They come out on the next play, hand it off to Devonta Freeman, who would take it into the end zone to put them up 16-13 after the extra point. So another note here too, though, John Harbaugh, who's ranked 5th in our coach rankings and 2nd in CCI, always up there. One of those, you mentioned Staley, maybe, a party of one on that 4th down. If there was going to be another coach that was going to go for it on that 4th and 1 that the Chargers had, I would think it would be John Harbaugh. But he had a really good call on 4th down early in this one too. So the 3rd best 4th down go of the week was in the second quarter, so 42 seconds left. 4th and 1 on the Chicago 43. Chose to go for it up 3-0. Getting late. But this is kind of on the borderline of that territory we've talked about, where at the end of the second quarter, sometimes the field goal becomes the optimal play. This situation, that's a long, over 60 yards, which is definitely makeable for Justin Tucker, but still not ideal, especially on a 4th and 1 with that offense, even with Huntley in there. Just to go for it there, and then you don't leave much time for Chicago to respond anyway. But it's a 6.1% increase, and they're able to get 8 yards and the first down there.
Yeah, that's right. Just to highlight the timeouts in this situation, the Baltimore had 2, the Bears had 3. So 42 seconds left, and you're the team, with a healthy amount of timeouts. You really have the ball in your court, so to speak, to borrow a cliche from a different sport. But you really have a lot of control, I guess, is what I mean to say, over who gets last possession, right? And so when the Ravens go for it here, it's really a lot better than the alternative of punting. They can really there's enough time where they can really utilize it fully with their timeouts, and then they can deny the Bears the opportunity of having any sort of valuable possession, which the Bears could easily have with all of their timeouts. So and the fact that it's 4th and 1 just really makes this a slam dunk, especially because you'd be punting as your alternative instead of kicking a field goal realistically, I think. Even though you have the best kicker ever on your team, it's still an absolute bomb, and I don't think they're regularly attempting 60 plus yard field goals all the time over there, even though in spite of having Tucker on your side, it's just not something that even he's going to be converting all the time. So this was as you mentioned, more of the same from John Harbaugh. He's definitely cream of the crop in the NFL when it comes to making these decisions, and he shows why in this one that we just talked about.
Yeah, and you said Chicago had all 3 of their timeouts, so you kick a field goal there. Even if you make it, you're up 6-0. They still have probably 37, 36 seconds left with 3 timeouts.
Yeah.
You miss a field goal.
Really bad.
They're at midfield with 3 timeouts. Just need 10 or 15 yards for a long field goal attempt. So the time there's just enough time that makes going for it worth it in this situation.
Yeah, and all the alternatives are bad, and you could probably start talking about maybe there's some distance on the 4th down go where it becomes like all your decisions become like equally bad, but 4th and 1, it's still the right thing to do to go for it.
So that'll do. Not really a ton of big storylines this week. We had some big losses. The Titans with a big loss to Houston. The Packers lost to the Vikings, though that wasn't as surprising to us. We actually had Minnesota as a favorite there, as a team that had performed much better than their record showed. But that'll do it for just kind of those game overviews we're going to cover. We're going to move into now our top 5s, starting with the top 5 most impactful plays. We've covered all but one of these, so I'll go through these pretty quickly. The number 5 was the Ravens' Tyler Huntley's interception at the Chicago 14 that cost Baltimore 22.6%. Number 4 was the Chargers' Austin Eckler on 4th and 1 gets stopped. Pittsburgh takes over. That's a 23.2% decrease. This one actually tied for number 3 with the Titans. Ryan Tannehill, 3rd and 6 at the Houston 18. They're down 3-0 early, which is surprising. Still a lot of football to play. But he's intercepted, and Houston takes it all the way back to the Tennessee 6-yard line. Ended up being also a 23.2% decrease in win probability. So really, I don't think we have anything else from this game. So a pretty shocking result.
Yeah, I think Tannehill threw like 4 picks or something
like
that.
Yeah, he had a bad game, and it's really not – I say it's shocking, it is. We didn't expect them to lose. But Tennessee has not been as good as far as DVOA goes, and the way they've actually played compared to their opponents, they've scratched out a handful of close wins. Lost to the Jets, now they've lost to the Texans, 2 of the worst teams in the league, but they're, I think, 7-0 or 8-0 against playoff teams from last season. So kind of crazy, but not that we expected them to lose. We still had them as pretty heavy favorites, but was kind of bound to happen at some point, it seemed, based on the underlying metrics of how they've actually played.
Yeah, exactly. When you sort of strip things back, take an advanced look at things, as DVOA does, they're winning ugly, and they're just eking them out. I mean, I think it's sort of like where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Yep. And eventually, you lose to the Jets, and now you lose to the Texans. I think the Texans squad, though, is definitely picked up some momentum now that they have Tyrod Taylor back. But it's definitely a team that they're a heavy favorite against. They should be winning most of the time, and but I guess we were surprised like everybody, but not that surprised, right? I guess is the real takeaway.
And to be fair, Vrabel is dealing with a lot of injuries on a team. I think I had seen somewhere someone saying, I don't know if it was actually a record, but to play with the most players in a season or something, because they've just got so many injuries. But still, they had enough guys, with Tannehill, and they've still got, A.J. Brown and some of those guys. The defense, still good enough against the Texans team that's, bottom 5 in the league, should be able to beat. But, yeah, the interception in the very end of the first quarter, again, tied for number 3 most impactful of the week. Number 2 and number 1 we talked about as well. The Bears, it was Andy Dalton's deep touchdown to Marquise Goodwin. There on 4th and 11 was 41.8% increase in win probability. And then Tyler Huntley's pass on 3rd and 12 converted to Sammy Watkins down to the 3 that set up that game-winning touchdown was 44.7% increase and the most impactful play of the weekend. With one game to go, we'll get to the preview of that game between Tampa Bay and New York here in a little bit. Doesn't really expect to be close, but you never know. I mean, Tampa Bay was, I think, 11-point favorites last year on Monday Night Football. Also in the month of November, and the Giants kept it close. Had a chance to tie it with a 2-point conversion at the end, but could not. So we'll see. But now that we've covered the most impactful plays, going to move on to the top 5 best fourth down decisions. Before we do, just want to remind you to rate, review, subscribe to all of our EdjSports shows, again, on any podcast platform of your choice, and then as well on our EdjSports YouTube channel. We post all of our shows, matchup previews, everything on there as well. So moving on to the top 5 most best fourth down goes of the week. Of Sunday, basically. There were none from that game on Thursday between the Patriots and Falcons. A shutout there for New England. But this one, we covered the top 3. So just here, number 5 and number 4. Number 5 comes in. It's Carolina Panthers. Matt Rule, Cam Newton against his old coach, Ron Rivera, who's now with Washington. This was early on. I think it was the opening drive of the game. If not, it was Carolina's first drive, or 0-0. 4th and 1 in midfield. Give it to McCaffrey for 15 yards. Ended up being a horse collar on this as well. But the decision to go for it in the first place was 4.3% increase in pre-snap win probability. Pretty self-explanatory there. I mean, you're in midfield. You've got Christian McCaffrey, Cam Newton, who can also run the ball. You should be pretty much any team, honestly, should be going for it at that point early on.
Yeah, exactly. And this game was an interesting one, a reunion game of sorts. Lots of kind of undercurrents, headed into this one with Cam Newton coming back for his old team, the Panthers. Of course, Ron Rivera's on the opposite sideline now for the Washington football team, and it's in sort of one maybe lesser known reunion aspect of this game that you brought up, which is the kicker. Yep. Joey Sly now finds himself place kicking for the Washington football team against his former team, the Panthers. So yeah, lots of interesting things here. It turned into a close one, and but to kind of focus on this decision right here, it's really the right move. I know Matt Rule has been sort of a bit inconsistent this year, but I think this one sets up nicely for him to go. It's 4th and 1 midfield, so to belabor it yet again, there's just really not a lot of great alternatives available to you. So you're going to be converting this at a high enough clip where it just really makes sense to go for it, even though it's so early in the game. 11 minutes left in the first quarter, and there's no points on the board yet. Really the right move to go for it. Also helps when you have Christian McCaffrey, right? Yeah. And it wind up coming. He coming through on this play with a big 15-yard gain, picks up the first down, and off they go. So yeah, we really like this decision for Matt Rule, and would love to see more from him. In this vein.
Yep. And so number 4 is on the flip side. Washington and Ron Rivera tied at 21 late in the game, just over halfway, or just right at halfway through the fourth quarter. Tied at 21. Got 4th and 3 at the Carolina 43. So here they can choose to either kick a long field goal, similar to Baltimore. They'll be at 61 yards at this point. Joey Sly does have a good leg, but I don't really think we can expect him to make that very often. And then just looking, if you go for it, there's still if you don't get it, there's still quite a bit of time left. 7.5 minutes for Washington, whose defense, hasn't been as good, or as good as we expected, but still over the last couple of weeks, but they did very well against Tampa Bay last week, holding them. So this was a good decision. 4th and 3, they ended up converting on this as well. This was a 5.4% increase in pre-snap win probability. And just with a punt here, we mentioned the field goal is going to be tough. A punt, you just don't gain enough there.
Yeah, it's extra bad here. So your field goal is like 60-ish yards, and when you punt here from your opponent's 40-ish yard line, very realistic to think like you might only swing field position like 20, 25 yards, something like that. And that's just really not much to get excited about when it's a tie game with about you're midway through the fourth quarter. So got to start making things happen. Got to put points on the board, and field goal some of the time could be the right move if you were a little bit further down the field, but since you're at the 43, your opponent's 43, going for it 4th and 3, slam dunk, definitely the right move by Riverboat Ron. And he's had a reputation, he's earned it, and this is, I don't think we don't think this is too much of a gamble, mm-hmm. But I think it's calculated and really the right thing. But I guess by now a lot of people have come to expect this from him. Yep. So props to him to find the right call in this situation.
Yeah, and we will see him later on the other side on the worst decisions here coming up in just a few minutes, but making a really good call there that ended up putting them in position to take the lead just a few minutes later. The top three we covered, so we'll just run through these quickly, not to spend too much time on these, going over them again, was John Harbaugh, 4th and 1 at the Chicago 43 at the end of the second quarter, was 6.1% increase in pre-snap win probability. Number 2, Chicago, Matt Nagy, 4th and 1 at their own 49, just shy of midfield with 12 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter, was a 9.5% increase. And then Los Angeles Chargers, tied at 34, 4th and 1 at their own 34 with just under 4 minutes left, choosing to go for it, was 13.2% increase in pre-snap win probability. So that'll do it for the top 5 best 4th down decisions of the week. Before we get to the worst and have some fun there, we'll just remind you about our site, our app, EdjSports.com. The app is EdjSports. The app is available for both iOS and Android on both platforms, as well as on our website. You can get pregame betting analysis. You can see NFL news. And really get pregame information for every single game for the entire season. So see our fair value spreads, our totals, which we'll explain and kind of talk through when we're talking about Monday Night Football tonight. So got a lot of really good information on there. Again, that's edjsports.com, EDJ Sports, and the Edge Sports app. So Scott, now that we were giving these coaches some props, now we got to tear some people down a little bit. We'll wrap up the weekend recap by looking at the top 5 worst decisions. These also all come from Sunday. Starting with number 5, Kyle Shanahan. A lot of people were on him for this. This one would be a lot bigger if it was later in the game. Maybe that's why he didn't do it. But they had a 20-play. I think this last one was the 20th play. 87 yards, 13-something minutes out of the opening drive of the game. Gets a 4th and 1 at the Jacksonville 2, a team that they're heavy favorites against. Should have no trouble. Obviously didn't really have much trouble getting the ball. It took them a lot of plays, but get down the field. Chooses to kick the field goal, which is a 4% error.
Yeah, you say tear him down. I'm going to go with constructive criticism. But yeah, this one, oh man, this one is bad. You're on the 2. You have 4th and 1 from the 2. Man, it's just way too valuable a play to waste by kicking a field goal. We talk about this time and time again. There are other ways for this play call to work out, even if you don't make it. You can, well, obviously you can score a touchdown on the very next play. You should with a high degree of likelihood. But you can pick up the first down, setting up 1st and goal from the 1, which is super valuable. And obviously, even if you fail, you're pinning your opponent deep. I think really the only thing I can think that might have been going through Kyle Shanahan's head here is that, why rock the boat against a team that they're a heavy favorite against? The Jacksonville Jags are definitely amongst the bottom of the league this year. So, because it's early, he feels like maybe he doesn't really have to, really take the risks, pull this one out. I guess in some sense it kind of played out that way. They won handily in this one, but yeah, in general, you do not want to make a habit of kicking the field goal here. It's just you're just leaving too much on the field by doing so. And now that you got Jimmy G back, you have a very confident offense, and registering 7 points here is just it's over twice as good as 3. So you definitely like I mentioned, don't want to make a habit of this, and hopefully if something should come up again for San Francisco 49er fans, that Kyle Shanahan finds the go in this situation. But yeah, and also sort of like an anticlimactic way to end this drive that you highlighted. 13-minute plus drive, 20 plays, and ends with a field goal on 4th and 1 from the 2. Ugh, God, that just hate to see it.
And you mentioned Jimmy G. He had a pretty good game. But right before this, on 3rd down, I think, or second or 3rd down, I forget which one it was, he missed a wide open Jeff Wilson for the touchdown, which was fantasy heartbreak for a lot of people, as he got the start yesterday in his second game back with Elijah Mitchell out. But yeah, tough one there, missed it. But it's not even that they had, 1st and goal at the 1 or 2 and they struggled to move the ball. They can still get a first down here. So they had 1st and 10 at the 11. They get 9 yards on 1st down. It's the incompletion, it looks like, here on 2nd down, no gain on 3rd down. But still, like you said, you can still get the first down. You're playing against a team, Jacksonville, who has been pretty good against the run lately, but you don't have to run the ball.
Right.
So just this decision, maybe it was just he expected they're going to win, but at the same time, it's early in the game. You still have 3 quarters to play. If you don't get it here, it's not the end of the world. You're that much better than this Jacksonville team. So definitely a head scratcher there. We are not the only ones who were confused by that decision. Then number 4 is the Raiders. Someone we've seen Bisaccia on here quite a bit over the last few weeks. Gruden early in the season had actually, and over the last couple of years, had actually kind of come around, it seemed, and was really good with fourth down decisions. They've kind of fallen off a little bit with him now gone. But this one, they were down 4 to the Bengals early in the third quarter. A lot of football left to be played. 4th and 1 at their own 31. They've got a good offense, Derek Carr, a competent quarterback. They've got weapons in Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, who they got the ball to a lot more yesterday. Josh Jacobs, a good running back. And they choose to punt here. Just needing 1 yard, and it's 4.4% decrease in win probability. This is one, I guess, you're in your own territory deep. A lot of people might disagree. And for the same reason that I just said, there's a lot of football to be played to punt it away. But just like we say over and over again, your odds of converting a 4th and 1 are so much greater than it seems like coaches really realize.
Yeah, I think that's right. And with every decision that Bisaccia makes in his young head coaching career, and as he finds his footing in the league, we learn more and more about him, right? And I think here's case in point. We're not going to see him going for it, even on 4th and 1 backed up, deep in, I guess, fairly deep in their own territory. So they're at the Las Vegas 31. Punting, I guess, is just too comfortable of a call for him, and that's what he elects to do. But yeah, you highlighted all of sort of, I think, the high-level reasons why, trust your offense. They have guys that can execute, and especially in short yardage situations, that short yardage passing game with Renfrow, Derek Carr's, I think, great at that. And then obviously Josh Jacobs is a great threat, both in the running game and even short yardage passing as well. So yeah, we don't like it for obvious reasons, 4th and 1, even in spite of the fact that it's, somewhat early in this game, I guess, just at the start of the third quarter. But shouldn't be a surprise to our listeners. The Raiders are down here by 4 points, so, you can just think about every single time you find yourself in a 4th down situation where you're trailing as the game draws to a close. It's just wind at the back, right, of making these fourth down go calls. And they don't come up with it here. Perhaps with if Gruden was still there, he would make the call. I'm not really sure about that, but at the very least, it kind of seems like Bisaccia tends to be more kind of an old school guy, where he's gonna be punting, I think, in all these kind of classic situations where maybe the new school kind of knows better to be going for it. And that's what we saw here.
And so moving on to number 3 and number 2 are the same coach. And before we talk about these, this is kind of a good spot, and there are a handful of them, but a good spot to say, when it comes to our coach rankings, people ask, why do we put so much weight on 4th downs? Well, for one, it's kind of what we do. What we're best at is 4th down analysis and win probability analysis. But 2, one thing that I've mentioned in some of our videos is 4th down decisions alone can and often do swing games. They determine the outcome of games. And this, not as dire of a situation, but a great kind of example here is with Dan Campbell, who's been really good all year. He's number 10 in our CCI, again, which is the 4th down decision-making coming into this week. And, had been kind of criticized all year for being too aggressive. I've mentioned a couple times on this show and our other podcasts and streams that we've agreed with pretty much all his decisions. But in this situation, it's like with a backup quarterback, which we're accounting for, he kind of clammed up a little bit. So they were down 6 to the Browns, had 4th and 1 at the Cleveland 25 with 9:11 left in the game. Chooses to kick the field goal to make it a 3-point game so that a field goal now can tie. Touchdown still wins it either way if you can hold the Browns. But you've got a running back in DeAndre Swift who had 130 or 140 something yards yesterday, who's very good. That Cleveland defense is good, but it's 1 yard. The field goal. Cleveland's a very good running team, is able to kill a lot of clock for you if they don't score. And the Lions obviously are not. They don't have any wins yet, so shouldn't be necessarily counting on them to stop the Browns and then go and put up points. They did stop the Browns, so we'll kind of lump these two together. So that one was the 4th and 1, was a 5.4% error. The next one, they're down 13-10. So it's after they made that field goal. I said they did stop them. They get 4th and 9 at their own 41, but only 2:37 left. They do still have all their timeouts, but he chooses to punt. And in this situation, there's always I would say a decent chance you don't get the ball back with that little time left.
Yes. Yep.
3 timeouts, 2-minute warning. But still, and especially against a team like Cleveland, who's got the number 1 rushing offense in the league, a very good offensive line, and you're going to take your chances. I think this was the one where he said because he thought his defense was playing well.
Yeah.
But it's a 7.6% error. They never saw the ball again, never even had a chance to tie or win.
Right. Bingo. I mean, you nailed it. I think a lot of times when you see these really conservative calls made, there's just sort of this assumption like, oh yeah, we'll punt it away, our defense will stop and we'll get the ball back, and it's really not so fast. And this is case in point here. So I mean, the Browns, as you highlighted, just an excellent offensive rush team. They can really grind the clock out in these situations, leave you with little to no time left, or maybe not even getting the ball, as in this case. And when you're the Lions, I think a common sentiment that I remember us echoing in past episodes is, what do you got to lose, right? So go for it, right? Like, leave the offense on the field. If you're even thinking about it, just be aggressive, right? At this point in the season, you really don't have much to lose. And there's really, if you're to be, I think, completely brutally honest, as you look at this Lions squad, there's really not a strength of the unit. So it's not like you have a strong opinion about your defense being more competent than your offense. I know, like, if there really was a bright spot, maybe it would be, Jared Goff, who's has, I think, had a decent tenure in the NFL. Obviously, he wasn't playing yesterday, so maybe that contributed to it. But yeah, keep your offense on the field, be aggressive, and kind of take your shot to give your team the best chance to win. You're going to find yourself being the underdog all the time, and no different here as they're trailing at the end of this one. So the right thing to do if you're truly playing to win is to to seek the variance and really go for it by trying to make a big swing in the game, picking up the first down, holding on to possession, drawing that clock down, and then hopefully ultimately going down and punching it in the end zone to actually take the lead instead of just trying to field goal your opponent to death, because it's going to be very, I think a lot more common than maybe Dan Campbell thinks. He's not going to get the ball back, right? Or is going to get it back after his opponent has gone down and put up even more points. So, yeah, really, really not, I guess, too much, technical stuff that I'll get into here. They just, a field goal kind of pretty deep in your opponent's territory on 4th and 1, never something that we're going to really endorse. And then, even though I know the other one seems maybe a little alarming because it's 4th and 9, but there's 2.5 minutes left in this game. You have to be realistic about your shot of ever seeing the ball again when you punt it here. Even if you have 3 timeouts, the Browns just were able to ground it out on them and seal it 13-10 in this one. So.
Yeah, and that 4th and 9 is similar to one that's not on here, but I mentioned earlier with Mike McCarthy, who came in as number 1. They had about 8 minutes left against the Chiefs yesterday. They were down 10, had a 4th and 9 at their own 42, and he chose to punt. Kind of, to me, just kind of cutting his losses and saying, you know what, instead of trying to win, because you not only are you down 10, you need a touchdown, an extra point, a field goal just to tie. But you're kicking it away to a Kansas City team who, didn't put up a ton of points yesterday, but has looked really good lately. They moved the ball pretty well yesterday, ended up having to settle for some field goals. But you just have to hope that they don't even score. If they get a field goal, now you need 2 touchdowns, you can still win. But if they get a touchdown, it's over.
Yeah,
and
right.
What Kansas City did, I don't think they ended up scoring any more points because they won, I think, 19-9. But they killed, I think it was maybe 5 minutes of clock after that punt. So Dallas got the ball back with very little time. It was 5:20. They got the ball back with about 2.5 minutes left, down 10. There's not much you can do. Kind of were able to drive down the field pretty well, starting from their own 3. Kansas City, not really probably trying their best, but knowing they're up 10 with 2.5 minutes left, it's going to take a lot to win, and then ended up getting an interception late in that one to seal it out. So, again, McCarthy kind of struggled this week after being very good for most of the year. So he doesn't make the top 10, but that was it cost a third of their win probability. Dropped them from 9.3 down to 6.2, I think. So really tough one there. But number 1 is one that is a 9.9% decrease, not just what their win probability was before the play. 9.9%, almost 10%, and it was Washington up 24-21, 4th and 3 at the Carolina 11 with only 1:54 left. So Carolina's got no timeouts left. And Washington last week had that 4th and goal at the one against Tampa Bay. It was a little bit different because they were up, I think, 11 at that point, so it really wasn't like Tampa had a good shot to win. Maybe they were up 8 and ended up winning by 14, 15. But this one, Carolina's got no timeouts. They convert this, the game's over.
Right.
He chooses to go for it, or chooses to kick the field goal to go up 6, still giving the Panthers a chance to win if they get a touchdown. Now, we're not saying that they lose because they kick the field goal. They're still at 76%. They still win 3 out of 4. Want to make that clear because a lot of times I think people get confused. They see, especially when we're tweeting these things, putting it on social media or they see writers kind of posting about it saying, oh, it was the biggest error of the week at 10%, they're still winning 3 out of 4 games.
Right.
But if you go for it, based on your probability of converting and based on the strengths and weaknesses of these two teams, you win over 4 out of 5. Over 4 out of 5, between 4 and 4.5 out of 5, which is, I would say, is a better number than 3 out of 4.
Yeah, it's subtle and sort of hard to pick up on, right? Because you only ever get the one game that you're watching. But yeah, we feel pretty comfortable about this just being not a good call. It has a lot of kind of the classic ingredients that we see that make it a bad call. The first is the score, right? So going up 6 in this situation, so going from a 3-point lead to a 6-point lead is really not great. Our colleague over at Football Outsiders, Aaron Schatz, has highlighted this from time to time that you're really, kind of apart from just the hard analyses, you're incentivizing, you're now incentivizing your opponent to really push the pedal to the metal and convert, to be even more aggressive on their subsequent drive, to really push for a touchdown. And that then beats you, right? As opposed to maybe giving them the ball with just a 3-point deficit, they're going to perhaps just kind of rest on their laurels a bit and only drive for the field goal. But yeah, 4th and 3 here. Their opponent has no timeouts, as you highlighted. So you go for it, you make it, the game is over. You're going to be doing that at a pretty high clip. It's only 3 yards that you need to pick up, and even if you go for it and fail, you're going to be giving the ball over deep to your opponent, deep in their own territory. So they have to go really, really far to really do the damage to you. And yeah, I think that's definitely discounted and not fully factored in. By making your opponent go an additional 20, 25 yards maybe than they otherwise would, with no timeouts. That's that takes a lot of time off the clock, right? And as you're kind of on the other side of the 2-minute warning, and they have no means to call timeouts, it's just really an uphill climb for them. So
especially with Cam Newton, who they run the ball a lot, they don't have timeouts, so that's going to be tough, and isn't, especially with his shoulder issues he's had, isn't the greatest passer. He's only played in 2 games now, but still, like, you're forcing a more run-heavy team, I think, to try and pass the ball downfield.
Yeah, that's a nice point, and probably another one that works in the favor of going for it here, because Cam Newton, I know he was a longtime Panther, but he's new to this Panther squad, right? And that coaching staff and that offensive unit. So really forcing them to execute is something that is an advantage to you as their opponent. So definitely not the right call by Riverboat Ron here. A little bit too conservative for our liking, and we mentioned a good call from him earlier in this game, but yeah, this was just really not the right move in our opinion when it came down to it.
Like we said, they did end up winning the game. One of those 3 out of 4, they won the game. So not terrible or the decision. It's looking at the decision itself, but overall, they were able to get the win. The defense was able to come up with a big sack, I think, on 4th down around midfield to win the game. But if you're able to convert that, you don't have to worry about sweating as you watch Cam Newton and the offense try and get the ball down the field while you're on defense just trying to stop them instead of, having Taylor Heineke just take a knee a couple times to win the game. So, well, that'll do it for our top 5 for this week. You can always find those on EdjSports.com and on our EdjSports app. Again, that's EDJ Sports. So now we're going to move on to our Monday Night Football preview, the last game of Week 11, the last game before Thanksgiving. We've got our Thanksgiving slate of 3 games. But this one is the Giants and Buccaneers for the second year in a row in November on Monday Night Football. This time it's down in Tampa Bay versus up in New York. This one, should be a blowout. The Giants have played better. They were on bye last week, I think it was. They beat the Raiders the week before, who, to be fair, haven't been all that great. They had a decent record at that point, but really haven't played as well as their record indicates, similar to that Titans team we talked about earlier. But Giants are 3-6. They have won 2 of the last 3. The Buccaneers have lost 2 games in a row, which is pretty surprising to see with them. Even though they've had Antonio Brown out, Rob Gronkowski has missed some games. The defense is pretty banged up, but still, that's a team to see them lose 2 in a row, especially to who they lost to. The Saints and the Washington football team there. Saints with a backup quarterback is just, it's kind of hard to believe, at least for me, So Coming into this one, too, the coach rankings, Bruce Arians is 15th. Joe Judge is 30th. So Judge, again, at the bottom of the list. One of those young coaches, though, that has a really old-school mindset when it comes to fourth downs, it seems. And, that could be the difference. Bruce Arians, to be fair, in our CCI metric is not much better. He's quite a ways down the list, I think, in the around 28 or 29 coming into this week. I don't exactly remember. So 29th overall in CCI. Joe Judge is 28th, so they're right next to each other.
Yeah, point there is Arians is 15th, but I mean his team is doing him a lot of favors, right? And when you just isolate the play calls, Arians tends to be old school as well, and oftentimes we find him punting in this situation, or in fourth down situations. So. Definitely maybe not one to tune into from a play calling standpoint, or not a play calling standpoint, but an aggressiveness going for it standpoint. But we can kind of take a look at this one from the betting angle. And right now, it looks like the market has the Bucs as 11-point favorites. We actually think the Bucs should be closer to a 12-point favorite. So pretty close to being in line with the market. If we had to make a play, we'd give a slight edge to taking the Bucs to cover in this one. When we kind of shift over and look at the totals, it looks like the market has about a 49.5 point total on this one. We think that there's edge on the over by just a little bit. We have the fair value of the total at 53. So, nothing that looks extra juicy in this one. I think like every kind of observer, it looks like, kind of the classic favorite underdog matchup here. The Bucs are heavy favorites, over 10-point favorites, and don't really feel extra strong about making a play on this one, but if you had to, we would take the Bucs to cover, and we like the over by a little bit more when it comes to looking at the total. As we sort of shift and take in what the public money is doing on this one, it looks like it's pretty even. As far as the number of bets goes, it's 52% to 48% in favor of the Giants. So, like I said, a pretty close to a 50-50 split on the two teams in this one. But when we look at the money, it actually favors Tampa Bay by just a little bit, and that breakout is about 60-40. So, those two metrics sort of oppose one another in this matchup. So, the read there would be that the sharper side likes Tampa Bay to cover, but it's not a very strong signal, right? You have basically both of those numbers being pretty well in balance, so not a whole lot to read in the tea leaves from that. I think we hope for a good game, but I think like most, we expect that Tampa Bay should be, if they take care of business, should be pretty much a lock in this one. And we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Hopefully we're treated to a nice competitive matchup, or at the very least, when you have a sweat in this one, that it comes down to the wire. Should be fun. It can always be fun. So that's those are, I think, the general takeaways for us on this one, Ian.
Yeah, and I mentioned Tampa Bay kind of banged up. The Giants pretty banged up as well. Looks like, though, they should have Saquon Barkley back. Who knows what his workload will be. Devontae Booker should be available as well. He's dealing with a hip injury, so they may split that pretty evenly. Going against a Tampa Bay team that's pretty good against the run, but they'll be without, I believe, Vita Vea will be out, and then Antonio Brown is out as well on the offensive side. So both teams really banged up this year. But like you said, Scott, we still think Tampa Bay definitely should win. And favor the spread, you said, correct?
Yeah, we like them just barely to cover, or like them a little bit more than the market does to cover the spread.
Awesome. We'll be tuning in tonight, that last game of Week 11. Thank you all for listening. Just want to remind you again about our show on Monday. Scott and I are here every Monday morning. Thursdays we have a betting preview. We're going to try and get a betting preview out on Wednesday this week to cover the Thanksgiving games as well as the weekend games. And then we'll be back again on Monday to preview the Monday Night Football game next week. And those are all available on the EdjSports Podcast Network or on YouTube. So, again, subscribe to all of our shows. Give us 5-star reviews. If you leave a comment, doesn't matter what it says, just leave a funny comment, yell at us, whatever. We'll read it on the next show. And then don't forget about the site and the app you can download for iOS and Android that gives you access to all of our pregame betting information, those fair value spreads, fair value totals, the public betting. Sharp Rank as well is on there, available for both iOS and Android. Be on the lookout for our coach rankings on Wednesday. No video this week, but we will have our updated rankings so you can view those and see who's moved up, who's moved down. Sometimes it's just a matter of how other coaches around a specific coach played. If a coach, was in a blowout, there's really not much room to make really big decisions or really big good decisions or errors. But we'll have those out so you can see the updates there. And last but not least, Football Outsiders is currently running their special for FO Plus, their premium subscription for just 99 cents a week for annual subscription. So that's got some really good also betting information, which is typically pretty close to us. They are a little bit different, so sometimes there's some differences, but really helps if you see us and Football Outsiders on the same thing. It's probably a pretty good bet there. And then they've got some fantasy information as well with their weekly and season-long fantasy rankings. Again, that's at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe, just 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. Scott, thanks for joining me. Enjoy the Monday Night Football game and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all of those listening to us, and hope you guys enjoy some turkey and the football action on Thursday. Have a good one.